It's Cooking with Cuisinart. Great recipes from master chefs. Now, one of America's greatest chefs, Hubert Keller, from Fleur de Lis in San Francisco and Las Vegas, the Burger Bar in Las Vegas and St. Louis, and Sleek Steakhouse in St. Louis. And now, today's recipe.
Penne Lasagne, another fabulous dish that can be made ahead of time. If you're using a slow cooker, you can prepare that even the day before, and then the day of, really, you put it into the slow cooker, and 6 hours later, your penne lasagna is ready. It's that easy, and the slow cooker will do the job for you. First, I have different cheeses, and I will grate some mozzarella cheese. So I start with that. And then with the next one. Okay, so once I have that, I will remove 1 cup of mozzarella. All right, so now I'm just putting the disc back inside, and we're gonna grate some Parmesan cheese. Put that one in. Once I have that ready, I'm just going to transfer the cheeses into some ricotta cheese that I have right here. All right. So now I'm just going to stir very, very gently all those cheeses until I almost have like kind of paste consistency. So very gently, we're binding all 3 cheeses together. And of course, we will have a wonderful flavor right there. And then, of course, in the lasagna, like any other lasagna, really we have several layers, and that one in particular is very interesting. So we're starting with one of those cheeses as a layer. And then we will have some mushrooms, and we have some turkey meat. It's going to be fabulous. Okay, so that is ready, and you see how easy that goes, and it comes nicely together. So let me now exchanging the blades over here, and we will chop some of the mushrooms. Okay, so here we are, put it back in. All right. And I have some great button mushrooms right over here. I'm going to put those into the feeding tube. Okay, and just put it down. And you see how quick and easy that went. So once I have that ready, I will now transfer those mushrooms in a sauté pan, which is nice and hot. I put a little bit of olive oil in there, and we'll sear off those mushrooms. I will just put a little bit of salt and pepper on it. And just make sure that the pan is really nice and hot. Therefore, all the moisture is taken out, and the mushroom really picking up some wonderful flavors. My mushrooms are basically ready. As you can see, all the moisture has evaporated. So I will take out now the mushrooms, and we'll mix them into the spinach. All right. And then what I have here is the spinach, which has been all cooked. It can be fresh or frozen. And then where you get all the moisture out of the spinach by squeezing it between your hand, and you slightly chop the spinach. And that's what I'm having over here. I'm just gonna mix the mushroom into the spinach. I will adjust the seasoning a little bit with some salt and pepper. And that's our second layer, basically, or second step in that lasagna recipe. So now that I have the second one ready, here I'm putting the chopping blade back in the cup, and I have some onions and garlic over here. So first I start with the garlic. I chop the garlic first until very fine. And then once my garlic is really fine, just as you can see it, then I have an onion which has been quartered each half. I transfer that into the cup. And then now, just with a couple on and offs, I will just chop up the onions. And I will now transfer the onions in the sauté pan, which I will add a little bit of olive oil in it. And I will now transfer the onions into the sauté pan. really want to make sure that those onions are seared nicely, that they don't burn at the edges. And I want to make sure they're also nice and translucent. And that's now the beginning of the third part of the recipe. And obviously you can see here how those onions and garlic are going and how totally cooked and translucent. So now comes the time I'm going to remove those right over here, put them in the side of the pan, and removing the onions. All right. And it was very important actually to chop those onions really nice and fine the way I did it, so they're going to be mixing really well into the lasagna dish. So once I have that, again, I will crank up the heat a little bit, put those onions aside, and now another element here that I'm adding is actually ground turkey. So again, I will put a little olive oil in there and make sure we get the pan really nice and hot. And I will lower now the turkey into the pan and just start on cooking off the turkey. Okay, just gonna chop it up a little bit, just like that. So of course, in that particular recipe here, I'm using turkey, but chicken would really work very well. You can use also some beef. You can even push it, let's say, to use some fish, for example, a little bit of seafood. It's another great way on using that particular recipe. So once I have the turkey seared, so it's very important that all the juices are really cooking out of it. So now I will actually lower some diced tomatoes into the pan, right over the turkey. And I'm just gonna put the onions back in there. So I'm gonna lower now the onions back inside. And talking about flavors here, this is gonna be the probably best lasagna you prepared at home. So let me mix that together. And I will add a little bit of seasoning to it. So it's very important so we get all those layers of seasoning when we do the final product. So it's important. So once I have that, I'm just cooking out the moistures from the tomatoes. And basically we are ready with that step. So I'm just turning off the heat, put all the ingredients over here, and I just let that sit. The time I will be doing over here, the last step of the dish. First, I have some tomato sauce right over here. I will lower that into the bowl. Then I have some dry oregano over here and some dry basil. So I'm going to mix these two elements into it. So I'm stirring in now the dry basil and the dry oregano in a tomato sauce prior to add the diced tomatoes. Okay, so I'm folding in now the diced tomatoes and the tomato sauce. Okay, so once I have that nicely mixed in, let me grab a little salt and pepper. Okay, now once we have that, so now comes the last step. I'm just going to lower the penne pasta into that tomato mix, nice and gently. And I'm just going to mix the tomatoes with the pasta, just as you can see it. Very nice and gently, just stir it in. So of course here in that particular case, I pre-cooked the penne to like 3/4 cooked, and the rest of the cooking will happening in the pan. And that's very important. Okay, I think that's probably nice and evenly mixed right there. So we are ready now to put the layers in the slow cooker, and that's the fun part. So over here is my slow cooker. So what I need to do first is just spray it with a little bit of non-stick spray. And once I have that, so now I have my elements here, which is basically I have the pasta with the tomato. Then over here I have the mixture of the 3 cheeses. Over here is another layer of the spinach and the mushrooms. And of course in the pan I still have the turkey mixed with the tomatoes and the onions. Let me build up that lasagna, and that's really the fun part when you have everything ready, just to build it up and to really see what goes into that pot. Let me take about 1/3 of the pasta into that tureen right here. Okay, So once I have that, let me just spread it out, just like that. So like an even layer of pasta and tomato. I take half of the cheese mix, and I'm gonna lower that into the pot. So half of the cheese mix goes down. Okay, once I have that. So of course, I wanna make sure I spread it out. So I'm just gonna use a spatula and put a little layer of that cheese right over the pasta, just to spread it out a little bit. So now that I'm having that, so the next one is actually the turkey mixer, which is over here. So I put everything in there, one layer of all those little goodies and great flavors here. So it was a little work involved to get all those little layers ready, but the fun part is really then using the slow cooker, and then they're really gonna make your life really easy. So I put a nice layer of that. So once I have that, we continue with another third of the pasta. So let me lower that here. So again, a third of the pasta goes over the turkey. And all together, I think even if you are mixing up the layers or whatever, I think you have so many good flavors that the lasagna is still going to be a great, great dish. But might as well we follow the rules. Once I have the pasta ready here, so now comes the layer of spinach and mushroom. So everything goes in on that one. Everything goes in at once. Okay, so again, I'm gonna spread that one out nice and evenly. And you see the proportions are really working extremely well because I get each time a very nice and generous layer of ingredient. So now comes the cheese. So that was the other half of the cheese. I'm just gonna put that one on top. Okay, so once I have that, so let me spread that one out nice and evenly. And so once we have that, we have a nice layer of that cheese, and that cheese really will be melting really nice and makes that lasagna so creamy. In particular, when was the last time you cooked the lasagna for 6 hours very slowly? So that's the trick actually of that recipe. So now I have the cheese, comes the remaining pasta right over the cheese. Okay. And once I have that ready, now I'm just finishing spreading out that last layer of pasta. So now I have the remaining cup of mozzarella that I had saved from the beginning, and I will sprinkle the mozzarella over. So that was that last cup of mozzarella. And once I have that done, of course, the great part of that recipe also, and using the slow cooker, is that entire pasta can be done ahead of time. You can even freeze it and actually take it out from the freezer maybe a day before and then just transfer it into the slow cooker and cook it. But that's so easy. So after that stage, I'm just gonna cover up the slow cooker like that. I will set it going, I turn it on, then put it to low, and then set it up to 6 hours. And once we have that, I'm just gonna walk away and it's cooking by itself. The slow cooker does all the job. But over here, I have one which is ready. And then you can see how actually nice and creamy it is and nice and cheesy. And the last thing, I will put a little bit of parsley over it. And you're really, with that recipe, you're really cooking for a crowd. It's really easy. You can actually feed quite some masses. But the most unique thing about the lasagna that you never tasted before is cooking it slowly for 6 hours. It creates the textures very, very unique that only the slow cooker can do for you.